Hello, I hope you're doing well today. I'm Lisa Taggart. Some of you may also know me as Inky Bliss. I'm a mixed media artist from Northern Ireland, and I'm very privileged to be on the design team with Lavinia stamps, and that means that I get to use the exquisitely drawn imagery created by Tracy Dutton. I've been crafting for many years and I've been into art for a very long time, and I'm totally addicted to art supplies, which means that I love to layer in my work to create the desired effect. Probably my thing is colour, and also I pay particular attention to the lighting. The pieces that I create, given that I'm using Lavinia stamps as well, are, I suppose, fantasy art, and they use mainly silhouette stamps, and that's where the lighting is important. And I just enjoy creating these types of pictures. If you happen to be watching this video on YouTube, I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing, and if you like the video, hitting the like button. You may also find me on Instagram at Inky Bliss, and if you would like access to hundreds more of my tutorials with step-by-step instructions, you're very welcome to head on over to my website, which is inkybliss.com. So today, if you want to join me on a creative adventure where every day is a school day, particularly for me, and I'm always learning from everything that I make, and you want to see some colourful fantasy art using the fabulous Lavinia stamps, then please keep on watching. Begin by using a couple of sheets of good quality mixed media card. This is multifarious. In terms of ink sprays, use what you have, but I quite like the dioxide inks. They're great to add. This little yellow dye ink I love. My favourite are the Delusions ink sprays because they're nice and bright. The mica sprays, the luster sprays from That's Crafty are great, and the Lindy's Gang Starburst sprays are wonderful. You'll need water and paper towel and just get spraying. So these are my favourite colours. Usually I go for yellows and pinks and oranges. Be careful not to mix colours opposite on the colour wheel, because you'll get brown, so I'm making sure the green is at the bottom and not mixed with the purple. Basically we're making an ink sandwich. You place the second clear sheet on the top, and this is what you get. So every one is different. Other materials that you might like to have are brushes, palette, white gesso, ink pads, water. I stamp out the stamps that I'm thinking of using. Some of these are new release stamps, and aren't they absolutely gorgeous? I don't use all of the stamps in the end. I use masks, so on copy paper, stamped and cut out. I also like to rehearse the composition to see what these sizes and things that fit in together well. So that's just a little test out. Other materials, my very favourite, the Stabilo all black pencil, the Stardust gold pen, the white gel pen, and of course a fine line black marker. These are all essential to me in my work, and of course glitter wouldn't be without that. Paint pens are a big part of my work as well, because they cover. Pastel pencils, and these are the Stabilo ones. I also like the chalk sticks, chalk pastel sticks. These are nice and blendable. The rubber is the putty rubber, which is useful to have as well. Some other things, copy paper to tear for landscape, heat gun, a rough sponge or stippling brush and a circle template. Now that the backgrounds are dry, we select which print we like the best. I'm going for the lighter one because there's more light in the background and nice places to place trees. So I've trimmed it down slightly, and we're starting by marking out the area for the moon. And to fill that in at first, I'm using white gesso. I really like using the white gesso because it's chalky. You don't have to use gesso, you can use white acrylic paint, but it has a good tooth for the pastels which I'm about to use. The idea for the moon is just to roughly add in, using the light pastel colours first, a face shape with some extra circles to the right hand side. I basically build up the colour from lights to dark, and it's very important when I'm doing this that I add in some of the colours from the background to reflect in the moon. This will look very dark at this early stage, but I have other tricks to lighten it up later on, and you'll see that I also add in some green and some orange. Now what I'm doing is going around the moon with yellow and probably white as well, just to create more light around it. And this is where the putty rubber comes in handy. You can keep the light around the circumference of the moon nice and bright, and you just keep going. It's a bit of a dance really between darks and lights. When I'm satisfied, I fix that with fixative spray. You can see it goes a bit shiny after that. But to lighten it further, I take the sponge and some more white gesso, and I just slightly dab that towards one half of the moon. This also gives it a rough texture, and then I go over again with some of the pastels just to add in the detail again. Now what we're doing is we're adding a white circle around the moon. I find that this helps make the moon pop with having some bright around it. And also what can help is then to ink around it. So I'm starting off with a lighter green, and I like that light area towards the left hand side, so I'm just going to keep that and use the template as the mask, and with yellow ink around the sun at first of all. I then gradually build that around and then add in the darker green, gradually going out to the corners with a darker green again. And this is graduation, creates the impression of light coming from the moon. So there you are. It looks a lot brighter now that that is done. I will lighten it even further using some white pastel pencil. So you can see I've just roughly added over the surface. Now for the landscaping, rip some copy paper and take some pink ink, and remember that the pink will mix with the ink spray, so it actually will come out darker than pink. It's more a red colour. So always bear that in mind when you're adding ink, especially permanent ink, on top of the ink spray. So now I've got my hill, it's time for the stamping. I'm using one of the beautiful new release stamps. The stag is absolutely gorgeous, and dark brown ink, which actually comes out quite black. I'm actually out of my black at the moment, I need to replace that, but this is also quite dark. Don't worry if it's not perfect, because there's a little tip later on. Now I'm adding the trees, and I'm removing some of the ink from the bottom because I want a misty effect at the bottom of the trees. I'm stamping again in the dark brown for the tree closest, and I'll be using the mask and different colour ink to create perspective. That tree now is green, and I'm going to add an additional tree in a paler brown just to give the impression of distance. And then I'm going to add the skinnier tree to the right hand side in another pail, and remembering to remove the ink from the bottom. So it's just added roughly in at this stage. The next thing I want to do is add a few tree branches. I'll be doing some masking again to do this, but I'm also not inking up the whole stamp. You can see some of it's left out, and using the mask, just stamp against the mask for branches here and there, just roughly. The top, I'm going to be adding a lot of leaves, so just need a few little branches here and there, just wherever you think the leaves might stem from. And I've mostly used brown ink for the branches. Next I'm going to be adding the leaves, so I've got some dark green ink and I'm stamping across the top, just randomly, trying to build up the tree canopy. As you can see, I'm leaving the area at the left hand side light, and off camera I've carried on building up some more branches using my mask again, and also added leaves across the top in several colours. You can see there, just for an autumnal look. Now this is my Stabilo oil pencil, and I've filled in the stag, any gaps with that, and I'll show you here now when I'm going to stamp the owl. Another new release stamp, a beautiful owl, just for the stag to look up to. So I'm inking it up in the dark brown ink again, and making sure it's on a branch. I'm pressing in against the moon. Now obviously when I stamp against these moons, which are created with several layers, it'll not come out perfectly, so dry it off and use the black Stabilo oil pencil to carefully fill in within the line. Hopefully you've still got the line to be able to follow. And there you are, you've restored the owl. All is not lost. Now I decided to add some more trees to the other side, and you can see I'm masking off the land at the front and the bottom of the tree so that it's more forward than the other group of trees. And again, like the last time, I'm using the mask and the different colour ink to create a perspective. You see there now I've added some yellow on top of that brown and ruined my ink pad, but I will clean it off later on, I promise. So you can see they're very faint in the background, but it's just to create the distance that I need. And I'm also going to go for a misty look, so this helps build up the scene and create the perspective. So now I've taken another little stamp, and again this is part of the new release, and this is a beautiful little stamp, a little foliage, buds, flowers, not quite sure, but it does look very pretty against the moon. So I went crazy, not knowing of course when to stop using this, but it is such a pretty addition, and looks lovely against some of the branches that I've created. First of all, I've used the dark ink, and in a minute or two I also use the lighter ink again. It's a lighter green, and this helps with perspective. Now for the colouring, I have my Clean Colour Zig water-based colouring markers, and what I'm doing here is I'm using the yellow, the lightest colour, to go to the side of the trees that the light from the moon would hit, and there you can see I'm adding the darker colour the further away that you get from the light source, and I'll be just gradually building this up, darkening the furthest edge, and I'm not
I'm not doing this very delicately, I'm just layering colour on top, and as I say, concentrating the light to the right hand side and going over with the yellow marker, and I'll gradually build the left hand side of the trees up using pinks and oranges, and it's just to help again with the perspective and the light. And doing that again to the other side, only this time in reverse. So where the light will fall on the trees from the moon, you use the palest colour, and as you go away from that, then you'll add the browns, the oranges, the darker pinks and so forth, and keep building it up until you feel that the tree has form. Now this is the fun part. You take the paint pens and add the palest colour. In this occasion it's yellow, to the right hand side, again the side closest to the light source, which is the moon, and add in the yellow. Sometimes I rub it with my finger because I don't want it to be so bright. Do the other side, and then next take an orange paint pen, and that will act as the mid-tone for the centre. Do the same again, and don't worry about going over the lines. I take my black marker and go over some of the line work afterwards. Now pink is one of my favourite colours, if you haven't already realised that, and it's a very handy colour to add in to make things pop, and it just brightens things, and I just like adding pink. So there you have it, and as a final touch, again, where the yellow parts are, just a tiny dab of white gel pen to the very edge helps things pop even further. And you'll also see that I added some to the branches underneath the owl. Now I'm taking the yellow paint pen and adding a circle around the moon, again to help the glow and the colour be balanced, and adding some branches then to the other side, just lightly at first, and then that's the second generation stamping, using the mask again, and now adding darker first generation just for a bit of variety. Now this is something I do quite often. I like to add mist, and the perfect ink to use is the dioxide ink. So I'm taking a pale pink, and I'm using my landscape mask, and I'm just dabbing this, masking the foreground and bringing it in upward sweeps towards the trees, and being careful not to cover up the stag's legs, just in between. And so long as you don't get the dioxide ink wet, it really is a beautifully opaque ink, and it covers up the other layers underneath, and there you can see it provides a misty effect. Now shadows are important in my work. Where you have the light, you'll obviously have the shadow. And I start with the lightest pastel pencil, and it's really to trick the eye. It's not a perfect reflection. What I do is add a very rough shadow in the shape of the stamped image. It's not perfect, it's really a trick of the eye. I then build that up with the mid-tone pastel pencil, and finally add some black, particularly in close towards the feet or the base of the stamped image, and I just blend that out until I'm happy. And as I say, it's not perfect, it's just an impression, and I do that quite a lot underneath most of the stamped images. I'm also then adding the paler pinky tone to the trees, because and you'll see that the shadows go different directions depending where the image is from the light source. So it'll go a different direction if it's a tree over at the left hand side compared to the image on the right. I also add in the colour, as I said earlier, the reflection of the background in the moon where possible. Now what I'm doing is I'm adding in some chalk pastel leaves just to lift the canopy and give it an extra dimension. This is also nice to do, and it's very rough. It's not precise at all. It's just little squiggles here and there, but it also gives a misty effect, particularly if it's in front of the moon. And there you can see I'm adding in like a burgundy colour, just some squiggly lines, and then that brings us on to the final touches. This is what I do a lot towards the end of my pictures. I add dots and dashes, and it's really doodling, but the reason I add paint pen dots to my work is to balance the colours mainly. So you'll see that first of all I'm using a yellow paint pen, and I'm just randomly adding dots all over the artwork, including over the moon. As I say, I like to draw out the colours of the background and balance them by doodling. I'm using a pink paint pen now, my favourite colour, and it's just something it's very therapeutic as well, just to add some doodling on the picture. What am I doing now? I think I'm still adding paint pen, yes, yellow, and now I'm moving on to the white gel pen, and I usually add a few dots of white on my moons just for little craters. So yeah, just dots here and there. And also then I use the gold stardust pen to add some outline to the main stamped images where I think they would be kissed by the moon. And you'll see there I just lightly go around some of the stamping. Later on I also added some yellow paint pen, but I think I did that off camera, but you'll see that later on, just here and there to increase the opacity of the light. Sometimes although this pen is lovely, sometimes it's a bit pale, but I do love it. You can see there I'm also adding it to the edges of the trees, just anywhere I think the light of the moon will hit, and it just adds a little bit of subtle sparkle. Now in the foreground I quite often do just squiggles for grass, random grass, just if it's a bit bare. Obviously you could use some other stamps, and Lavinia stamp has loads of beautiful little foliage stamps. I could have used the small foliage stamp that I used in the trees. In fact, that would have been lovely. I'm kicking myself I didn't use that. But there you can see I'm just adding the paint pen and some pastel, and that's it. Apart from the edges, you'll see that I've taken the darker colour ink and I've gone around the edges, and then I've mounted the picture. And now, as a final touch, I always do this after the mounting, I go over it with some glitter. I like this glitter because it doesn't go everywhere and it's very, very twinkly. This is the diamond stickles, but I have lots of other glitter, and any glitter really will do at this stage. And again, I'm just adding dots and dashes and some glitter here and there where I think the image is going to be touched by the light. And that's pretty much it, the final touch, and it's a lot more twinkly in person than I can capture on camera, but you get the general idea, and obviously then when it's dried it creates a lovely twinkly effect. So that's it. Those are my processes, and that's what I mostly do, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. It was a pleasure being with you today. I hope too you can join me with maybe some more videos in the future, and it's bye for now, and take care.